Minwalla is visiting Studio 4. She is a lawyer who specializes in immigration law. She is one of the speakers in an upcoming Red Cross-sponsored series on global migration and human trafficking. And so much of human trafficking is an abuse of human rights, really.
Yes.
Bottom line.
Yes.
When are they often detained? If you're being trafficked, I guess the real question is, how do they get to you?
Yes, well, actually, that's the unfortunate part of all of this. The first place that I often encounter trafficked women is when they've already been picked up by immigration authorities for some kind of an infraction under the Immigration Act, maybe working illegally or being here without a proper visa or not having a passport, whatever. And then they're picked up on an immigration offense, detained, issued a removal order, and I serve as duty counsel regularly, and that's often where I encounter trafficked women in detention. So that is their first point of contact with somebody who is actually there to assist them.
How do you determine if somebody is legitimate or naive or illegal? Like, when do you, as a lawyer, you must have to say, I will act for you, I won't act for you. You're conning, you're the real thing.
Well, I mean, the fact that they're illegal doesn't mean that they don't deserve help. And the fact that they may not want to assist in the prosecution of the people who have trafficked them also doesn't mean that they don't deserve help. A good example of that is, or a parallel example of that is, for instance, none of us would doubt that an abused woman who is fleeing spousal abuse, who arrives at the door of a women's shelter and asks for help, but says, I'm too afraid to contact the police because my husband has threatened me, or I feel more risk if I cooperate with the police. No one would deny that that person still deserves protection in the women's shelter and she should be invited in.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with trafficked women. The fact that they are not willing to cooperate with the police for whatever reason that they may have, or that they have offended the Immigration Act, committed an offense under the Immigration Act, doesn't mean that they don't deserve help and protection.
What happens to them if they are returned to their country of origin? I know it depends on the country, but you hear often a refugee say, legitimately and sometimes not legitimately, if I go home, I will be killed.
Yes, unfortunately, we have very little knowledge of what happens to them when they're returned, because we're out of touch with them by that time. And so I have had some instances of people who I do know who had failed their refugee claim and had gone back. I know one instance of a person who was persecuted on return.
Why don't we know more about this? I know that there are some articles in the newspapers and online, but why do we know so little about human trafficking?
I think, unfortunately, the media plays a big role in that, in presenting both sides of the story. Trafficked people or refugee claimants are often looked at negatively by the public eye, and it's our job to educate the public, such as this Red Cross series that's showing at Vancouver Public Library, to educate the public to learn a little bit more about the complexity of the problem and the other side of the story. So now we're living in a world where everybody is paranoid about security threats.
Right.
And it appears that every time there's a security threat, a finger is pointed at refugee claimants when factually they have nothing to do with it.
But if you're a mail-order bride, you're probably not a security threat.
No.
Who are the mail-order brides? From what countries? Who have you encountered?
I have dealt with mail-order brides from South America, I succeeded with one refugee claim of a mail-order bride who had actually initially been taken to the United States and then managed to escape the situation there and come up to Canada.
What did she think was happening?
She thought she was entering into a legitimate marriage, and instead she was forced into prostitution in the United States.
Did she know the man? Did she have a picture of the man? Is there any connection, or is it simply an escape from her life in South America?
I think it was a combination of both.
How do they lure these women? What are some of the tricks?
Promises of a good life, promises of work, Many women engage or take the risk because they have families to take care of, and they're not able to take care of them fully in their country of origin, so they think they're going to be able to come to Canada, earn a lot of money, send it back to their families, and eventually have a better life.
Who's tracking this at an authority level? I know that we have, of course, CSIS and RCMP and intelligence working on human trafficking.
Yes.
But who is on it on a daily basis?
There is a special unit of the RCMP, and actually it's here in Vancouver. There is a special trafficking unit. There's also a representative of the Solicitor General in British Columbia who is working actually very hard at liaising with community members, the RCMP, and lawyers to try and tackle the problem. Resources are very limited. Government resources are very limited, and that limits even good-minded people from carrying out their work successfully.
Outward signs. If you're in an apartment building and there are women in that building who are being kept or trafficked, what do you look for? Because as you know, if you can help the RCMP or help somebody in a position of authority, as a citizen,
As a citizen, what do you
do?
Well, I mean, the choice is the woman's. What does she need at that point? You know, other countries, research studies demonstrate that the less coercive you are with trafficked people, the more likely in the long run that they are actually willing to cooperate with law enforcement officials. But when you come down with a heavy-handed approach, they're much less likely to cooperate with anyone. And that's one of the problems in terms of measuring the magnitude of the problem. It's very difficult because many trafficked persons, the most of the work with trafficked people is being done by non-governmental organizations. And it's been that way for many, many years. And those are the people who trafficked persons go to first. Why? Because they need emotional support, they need comfort, they need shelter, they need some form of security before they can even contemplate thinking about their choices.
If you've never been in that situation, it's difficult to imagine not talking to one another and gathering the group together and defying the authority, but we know it happens. Do you know what I mean? Like, because we see the world through our eyes.
Yes.
And if my girlfriends were all together in a room and somebody was keeping us, we would somehow devise a way.
Yeah.
Because we're in a totally different world.
Yeah. Trafficked women are, you have to bear in mind the level of control, the fear, and the risk that they feel, and being in a foreign country.
And the threats.
And the threats. And being
And
in
the threats are not, we'll take away your food. The threats can be death.
Yes. To the trafficked person or to their families. And their families are far away from them, so they don't know what's happening to their families.
Right. What about trafficking in young men? Do you study that?
No, I have not actually encountered any trafficked men.
Really?
No.
That's not saying
That's not to say it doesn't
in
happen,
the
but
world.
I have not encountered any trafficked men.
So as part of this Red Cross series, the Global Migration and Human Trafficking Speaker Series at the Vancouver Public Library,
Yes.
I know there's one this Wednesday
Yes.
coming up.
Yes, and the focus on that presentation is going to be children.
Children trafficked. How do you define that? Children under a certain age?
Yeah, I mean...
For pornography, why?
Why are children trafficked?
Yes.
For similar reasons that women are trafficked. Forced labor, possibly going into the sex trade. Very similar reasons.
Okay, and your presentation in March?
That's going to be on legal impediments to protecting trafficked persons.
What do you like about your job?
I love my job for many reasons. It's something that gives me a sense of higher purpose. I always marvel at the thought that somebody in a desperate situation has traveled thousands and thousands of miles and somehow lands in my office. And it's a real honor for somebody to come to me and put their lives in my hands. It's a great sense of responsibility, and particularly when you achieve good results. The other part of my job that I really like is the empowerment that people gain from working with me, particularly women. Many instances I've had women who, when they first arrive to me, with me, they're raw. You know, they're emotionally fragile. They're in a raw state, psychologically unbalanced. And with time, as we work on their case together, we build confidence, we make them stronger, and at the end, you know, they're really, really empowered by the process. And that's a very special feeling for me.
You learn a lot about resilience.
Yes, yes, yes.
And when you're having fun and not practicing immigration law?
Actually, I find my work fun, believe it or not.
That's a good sign.
It's brutally difficult. It takes a lot of energy, but it also gives me a lot of energy. So, you know, the issues are very serious, but it's also fun.
Right, but you do take the odd holiday.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.